Well, hey, everybody. Nate here. Thanks for tuning in. Our guest today is Ken Zandecki. We also have my dad with us. Ken is a territory manager for Schluter Systems, which is a company that creates products to assist tile setters, all kinds of edge metals, and what we're really talking about here is their waterproofing products, which waterproof showers and bathrooms. Now, you're going to see a lot of these products a lot closer in our Spec House series very soon because we used them. In fact, Schluter donated all of the product for our showers, and that was the first time I had seen them, and same with my dad. And so, unfortunately for you, the listener, you don't have the benefit of watching that video yet, but let me just describe the product briefly so you have a little bit of context. The Schluter product is, picture the barrier between the tile itself and the lumber. Now, in times past, this was done with mortar or these really heavy type, it's almost like paint, the stuff, Red Guard and these things that you roll on, or all kinds of combinations of mortars and chicken wire and hardy panel and such. But the Schluter product is a fabric. And this fabric is attached to foam, so it's super lightweight, and then that is screwed to the wall. And the fabric is also used to wrap and create niches and benches and the curb. It's really neat. And the other product, we don't talk about it as much, is the floor barrier, which I believe is called Detra, and that's like a plastic membrane that goes down on the lumber with Thinset, and then the tile fastens to that. So the point for you, the viewer, now, just understand we're talking about tile and really what is new technology in this ancient craft. One other item that I want to mention about this interview, and that is right before we hit record, and we were on a schedule with Ken and my dad. They both had appointments coming up, but right before we hit record, I had a septic repairman show up. Now, you don't know this, but I have been replacing my septic system at my house here over the last couple of weeks, and it's been a really big job. Very high impact project for the whole family. We've had to limit our showers and laundry. It has not been fun. And this is the guy who came to really dial in the electronics and the pump and the floats and such. So for obvious reasons, I chose to hit record and step out and make sure that got taken care of. So the first portion of this conversation is just Ken and my dad. I have no idea what they talked about. I'm sure it will be great. I hope you enjoy. Without any further ado, Ken Zandecki, Scott Wadsworth on the Essential Craftsman podcast.
So Nate had to step out for a couple minutes. He's got some repairs going on in his backyard, and so he's got a fellow out there that needs a little direction. So it leaves Ken and I in here for a few minutes, maybe to kind of veer off the rails a little bit.
There we go.
And we were just talking about, we weren't talking yet much about your journey into tile and tile setting and Schluter, but we will. But we just veered off into the fact that building is so much different than it used to be, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's changed. It's just changed. I mean, the building envelope, the materials we're using, the way we're doing things.
Yeah. And it's driven by, a sustainability interest and a green interest, but really it's driven by liability, right? I mean, liability and threat of lawsuit and product failure and people calling you back, that's on everybody's mind if you're in construction.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's the area we want to, like we were discussing earlier. You don't want to be on the witness stand.
Never find yourself on a witness stand. Yeah. I mean, there's enough liability in construction with just injury and disappointment and spilling a gallon of paint on somebody's carpet.
Right.
And then you add to that the liability that comes from class action or any of these other kinds of things. One of the things that we were just talking about is that a lot of folks get frustrated with building inspection and plan checking and building departments, and I've been there and I will be again frustrated with that, but it brings clarity to me to realize that those plan review committees and building departments actually exist because of building loans and homeowners insurance entities, right?
Correct.
Because those people that are inspecting and ensuring compliance with codes are making it possible for people to anticipate risk over time, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when did you start into construction?
Oh gosh. Well, I think I was in my early 20s. It started as a bathroom remodel, my own personal project. I mean,
Okay.
that's how I kind of got into the tile side of it. And then one thing led to another, as far as the neighbor come over, seeing what I had done. Hey, you can do this, can you do this? And then we did some work at my buddy's house, and it just kept, and it was a hobby. It wasn't even it wasn't a job. I mean, we had full-time careers, but we turned it into a hobby. And one day we looked at each other and said, we really don't know what we're doing.
But we like it.
We like it. It was
Yeah.
extra side money at the time. It was fun. We enjoyed doing it. There was a lot of creativity
There
in
you
the tile
go.
side of things,
Yeah.
which was kind of cool. And,
And
you
the-
had instant gratification.
The satisfaction of producing something every day.
Correct.
So it feels good to walk back out of the shower when it's all spaced out and stuck to the wall.
Right.
And you know the lines are right and the margins are good on it feels great.
Yeah, and the customer's happy,
Yeah.
and that's I think really for me that was my driving force. I mean, granted the paycheck was nice too, but it was always how can I make this person super happy with what they're getting? Because especially in a shower, you're doing a custom project for somebody.
Yeah.
It's a piece of them. It's their
Yeah.
house. Maybe it's their dream house. Maybe it's not, but. I wanted to give them every option I could.
Yeah.
I didn't want to finish their shower, and then 3 weeks later they seen their neighbor Susie's shower and said, "Well, I didn't have that niche, or you didn't tell me the option I could have this
Right.
bench or that." So I always wanted to give them every option and make it custom to them.
It feels so good to exceed somebody's expectations.
Absolutely.
Right.
Under promise and over deliver.
Boy, how about that? Yeah, that's good. And as you were describing that, so I've put in the course of the remodels, I tended to do additions and new kitchens and some new bathrooms, but I didn't specialize in bathrooms. But so I probably had responsibility for maybe 10 or a dozen nice showers, salted in with everything else. But it occurred to me, and just now as you were talking, that when somebody walks into a shower, they are at their most vulnerable. They're standing in there naked.
Correct.
Right? And it needs to be clean, and it needs to feel clean, and the water needs to drain.
Yep.
And so that's a whole nother sort of level of you're doing something that's pretty intimate for these people.
Yeah, I never actually thought about it that way, but that's also, and that just brought to my attention that's the start of their day.
It's the start of their day or the end.
Or the end.
A
Maybe it's
construction
the
geek
end,
showers
yes.
at night, right?
So it was my father-in-law used to always say, he said, there's a job. You have the jobs where you get up and take a shower in the morning, and then you have a job where you take a shower at the end of the day.
Yeah, my whole life I've showered at the end of the day. Okay. And your gig now is you shower in the morning.
I shower in the morning. I went from showering at the end of the day to showering in the morning.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So talk about you got established as a tile installer.
I did. I got, and like I said, when I learned my trade in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. A lot of tile down there.
A lot of tile down there. A lot of influence from across the border and stuff like that. So there's a lot of variances in tile, and really it was a good place to cut my teeth because
Really good.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because it's a tile world down there.
Tile floors are everywhere.
Absolutely.
And up here in the Northwest, a tile floor is okay. It's all right if you can heat it, especially in the winter.
Exactly.
Right. But down there, the tile as a heat sink is a great thing.
Yeah.
Suck the heat away from your living area.
Yeah, but what I love too was the craftsmanship and the handmade tiles
Oh, yeah.
and stuff like that. You up here, and now I guess in this part of the industry, we're more into the production made tiles. But
Sure.
down there, like I said, you got handmade tiles and different things like that. That's what I loved about the Southwest architecture.
You
I
bet.
guess. Yeah.
Southwest is a cool style.
Mm-hmm.
Stucco and tile and stone.
Right.
Because the sun eats everything else.
Right. Things that you don't see up here. on
Yeah.
this,
Yeah. And if you do, it's because you got a leaking tile roof, or
Right.
the snow didn't slide off, or
Yeah.
something. So you're established. You're confident in your skills, and you're developing a niche, and you got all the work you want, I assume.
Down there, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And then, life, family, things happen. 2005, we decided to move back up here to the Northwest. More so just for family. They were getting older and that kind of thing. But, and I got up here, I took about 2 weeks off, and I didn't know where I wanted to go. I was kind of at that time, not really done with tile, but I was looking for my other options.
Yeah, ready for a break.
And some friends of mine called, and they owned a carpet store, and they said, "Hey, we want you to come work for us? And I said, I don't know. And one of my buddies, very persistent, he said, look, I got a job. The guy that was doing it, his wife just had a baby. He can't go back and finish it. He says, can you go, okay, I'll go, finish it. So I went over and finished it
a tile job.
The work to my standards was a little subpar.
Right.
And I went home that night and I told my wife, I said, man, if that's the work that these guys are doing and they're getting away with it and the customer's happy and the checks are clearing, I can do this.
I can beat these guys.
Yeah. So I did. 2005, October-ish or somewhere in there, I opened up my business and it just snowballed. And by the time I went to work for Schluter, 23 years was my complete tile career, roughly, give or take. Anyway, it was, I've been with Schluter for 4 years, but that 23-year period, I gained 15 contractors. I had a bunch of different homeowners. I mean, they became friends.
You bet.
Because that's just...
What a wonderful, unexpected consequence of doing nice work that is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Develop a whole list of people you can wave at on the highway. Sometimes they'll call you or you can call them. That's really
And it wasn't a job.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I didn't get up. I so many times I hear people say, oh, it's Monday.
Right.
I got to go back to work.
Yeah.
And I was excited.
Sure.
Yeah. One of the hardest things to get over, and now I'm teaching young tile installers or young business owners about this. I had a guy call me a couple weeks ago. He was telling me, out on the coast, how much he was working this, that, and the other thing. And I had to work the weekend. And I told him, I said, stop. I said, get away from working the weekend.
Yeah.
I said, I learned with my guys. I said, I always thought that too. I thought, I'm going to get that extra day in. I'm going to get so much more done. I'm going to be ahead.
Right.
I said, I learned if we took the weekend off and just got back from it, we were most productive on Fridays and Mondays.
Yeah, there's that.
So
now, having said that, and for any young guys that are listening to this, that is an excellent general principle. But there are specific exceptions. There are times when, doggone it, you got to work. I mean, you have to work. Yeah. But don't make a habit of that. You got to sharpen the saw, right? Was it Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? I'm not sure if that's where I ran across the idea of sharpening the saw.
Right.
And Abraham Lincoln said, if he has,
don't quote you on this.
Don't quote me on this, Mrs. Lincoln. So I think it was Lincoln who said if he had 6 hours to cut down a big tree, he would spend 4 hours sharpening his axe.
Right. I do remember. Yes. Okay.
And so that's what the weekends are for, is to sharpen the axe so you can be productive.
Yeah. Well, that just that break.
Yeah.
That's
right.
You get. I see so many guys. You get burnt out.
Yeah.
And this job can really. Any construction trade, I think, for that matter, can really.
It can
wear on you.
And it does.
So
you've got 23 years in grade. So Nate's still coming back. He's just thrashing out there. Okay, he's taking care of some business. Yeah. But so you got 23 years in grade, I'll say, grade. And you've installed just pretty much, you feel like you've seen about everything you need to see.
Correct.
And you ran across Schluter. You put in lots of red pan. You put in lots of traditional installations.
Well, I ran into Schluter prior to that.
Okay.
So, and what I always tell guys, I said, look, and now being on this side of the business, I said, I made a living setting tile.
Uh-huh.
I made money when I learned how to incorporate Schluter into my tile business.
That's an interesting observation. Elucidate. Will you talk some more about that?
Okay. So I probably learned about Schluter, 27 years in the trade total, but I learned about Schluter probably 14, 15 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Okay. At that time, their workshop program was just kind of starting up. Me and my buddy flew to Anaheim, California to take the first class. Okay. Schluter was very innovative, I guess is the word I'm looking for, in the workshop program. They're the ones that kind of fostered it, started it, came up with the idea. And essentially what it was, and I love this about Verner Schluter, our founder, and we'll talk a little bit more about him later, but he has a very a good quote that I always like to use. It says, our products can't be sold, they have to be understood.
Okay, you told me that when we were watching Phil put some of that in, and I ruminated on that, and now that I've watched the work that he did and thought about it, I understand that now.
Right.
As a construction businessman, I'm resistant to being sold something because I mean, who among us likes to be sold, right? But as soon as the light blinks on and you see the why around the reason to think about making a change, all of a sudden you can analyze the change and what it's going to do for you. And when you understand it's a benefit, bam, it's easy to jump on, right? That's what he's saying, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, and a lot of our products, if you come from the old school tile world, which Verner did, I mean, he was a German. They did everything over there is masonry.
Was Verner a tile guy, or how did he?
Verner was a tile guy. So Verner, when he was 12 years old, he's the only guy I know that got into tile on purpose.
Wow.
Everybody else that I know got into it accidentally.
Okay, just veered down the wrong path and ended up setting tile.
Yeah, I mean, mine was a bathroom remodel. Some other guys that I know, they worked for their buddy's dad for a summer job, and it just turned into, hey, I like doing this, and they turned it into a career.
Mm-hmm. But not Verner.
But not Verner. He started out, he walked past the job site with his mom. He said, that's what I want to do.
Really?
Yeah. And he got into it in the early 60s. I think 1966 is the year that he started his tile business. One of the problems that they had over there was the edges of the tile were always constantly getting chipped. Okay. They were having to come back. They were having to repair, up against carpet, stair edges, stuff like that. So he got to thinking, he says, there's got to be a better way. Why am I going back to fix these problems? And in 1975, he came up with our first edge metal, and it's showcased in the front of all of our catalogs, that edge metal in our price book. It shows the evolution of that from 75 to current, because there has been some redevelopments in it, and there's a lot of science, and this is where we go back to our products have to be understood. They can't be sold. Mm-hmm. And I don't consider myself a salesman. Mm-hmm. I'm an educator. Mm-hmm. That's what all of us are at Schluter. We're just trying to help the tile industry become better, better products, more foolproof ways of doing things.
Well, we haven't turned the water on in those showers in that house yet, but I'm dazzled at how smoothly that went in for Phil. Because I've watched, Dave and I have a history of doing work around here, and I've watched him do that. And it's a stark difference between the process using all that Schluter stuff that you guys brought to the table and what I've watched him do and what I've done myself. I put a big walk-in shower in for my mom and dad 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so anyhow, it's better. I understand it now. And if I was in the tile business, I'd be looking at it hard. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, and if I may, back up on Dave and Phil, I met them when I first started for Schluter. So I flew back to our parent company, or our company in Plattsburgh, New York. That's where I got my training. And then when I came back, my first workshop was in Medford, Oregon, and Phil and Dave showed up. And I sat down with them at breakfast that morning before the class, because we always have a little breakfast before the class. And Phil looked right at me and he says, I don't even know why we're here. We don't like this stuff.
They're here for breakfast.
Yeah. And I said, and it just blew me away that why would you come? And he goes, but we want to know more about it.
There you go.
And by the end of that 2-day workshop, those guys they understood it. Uh-huh. They said, hey, we're going to go back. We're going to do this. And we've been friends ever since. Yeah. They were very adamant that, hey, this stuff, we're old school guys. This is how we do it. They were there probably for the CCB credits, honestly.
You bet. You bet.
And Phil just told me flat out, they weren't going to use it. They weren't believers. They didn't understand it.
It's so interesting because Dave who is as accomplished as tile setters get, or as accomplished as anybody I've ever seen as a tile setter.
Right.
He's so meticulous and so attentive to detail. And he's not here, but I think he would agree, and I don't think he'd mind me telling the story. I went into a doctor's house. I had a job to put a nice deck on the back. And I walked in and he had just had some interior work done, including a floor set. And I said, who did this? He said, Dave who? Well, the doctor was hard to please. And I said, well, what's wrong? He says, well, this tile's uneven. Oh, okay. I didn't pay any more attention. I hadn't met Dave. When I came in the next day, there's Dave talking to him. He heard the doctor's problem. He said, I'll fix that right away. And the next time I walked through that room, it was perfect. I thought, now there's a guy that I want to engage with. He didn't argue. He didn't justify. He didn't try to weasel his way out of it.
Right.
He just came back and fixed it. And so that's what those guys were bringing to your workshop. We know how to do this, okay?
Right.
We're pleasing people in Roseburg and have been for a long time. And Phil's saying, my dad knows everything there is to know, so why am I even here listening to this?
Right.
But man, they're converted now.
Right. Well, and that was Verner got a lot of pushback when he started with the company, like with our Dietrich product. It's a plastic uncoupling membrane. And I remember the first time he presented it to I don't remember, but the story goes that, it was an old school mud work guy that believed in the mud. And he says, I can't attach plastic or tile to plastic. How's that going to work? But once he understood the concept and the industry, I think, laughed at us when that came out too. And it wasn't until they understood the science behind it and how it worked and what it could do for you and eliminate all these problems that we were having in the tile industry, such as the very first edge metal that eliminated the problem of chipped tiles that tile installers were having to go back and fix.
I know Phil, he explained the issue and the concept he was having a hard time with the Schluter product was that the Thinset in a couple applications kind of acts or seems like it's acting as a water barrier. So I guess I predict that's a kind of common question you get.
Absolutely.
Can you kind of frame the question better and explain what's going on and then answer it for me also, or for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had the same reservations, I guess, about it when I first learned about it, because I was, I learned the old school mud way, and you had your liners and everything and your vapor barriers, and now we've got this product that we're putting over the top of stuff, and we're overlapping it by 2 inches, and we're calling that waterproof, but Thinset's not waterproof, and
the Thinset is used as like the glue to hold the two
bonding agent.
The bonding agent.
It's the bonding agent, yes.
But Thinset's not waterproof.
Exactly. But what you have to understand, and again, it goes back to our products have to be understood. They can't be sold. You have to understand the science behind why it works. And that was, I'd used it a couple times. I had faith in the company, but it wasn't until I think my third time, and I'm putting this together, and I finally called my rep at the time, and I said, okay, what's going on here? I said, you gotta help me wrap my head around this. I have to understand it. I said, I'm putting 2 waterproof products together with Thinset. How is that waterproof? Mm-hmm. And he says, well, you have to understand that Thinset, when you get it down to a molecular structure, okay, like the concrete that's in this floor, mm-hmm. the Portland cement that's put into it's very different than what you may hold in your hand that's in a bag of Thinset or mortar mix for setting tile. One's like a talcum powder, the other one's more coarse like beach sand. And because of that fineness of it or that density of it, once it's put together, a water molecule is just too big to pass through it.
It consolidates tighter.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Consolidates tighter. So
is it kind of like if you put I'm visualizing a drop of water on like a screen, let's say like a screen door. It may not just like fall right through it. It might just kind of
surface tension.
Is it kind of like that?
Yeah. Well, kind of, but water literally has to be forced through it.
Right.
Okay.
The water molecule
extreme
won't fit
pressure has to, and a water molecule is not going to go through that space. Wow. And we've done very extreme tests on that overlap and how much pressure we put on it and how much water we can force into it, which is very minimal. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but obviously our 2-inch overlap is overkill. Uh-huh. We're German, we like to overbuild everything, so we're going to put a lot of redundancy in it, and we don't want it to fail any more than the client or the installer wants it to fail.
Oh, interesting.
So, and now with our own Thinsets that we have out, we can do lifetime warranties on these systems.
No kidding.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. In addition to the fact that the installer is only mixing up and like inventorying one type of Thinset for whatever he's setting that day. Is that right? He can turn around and then set tile with it.
Absolutely.
Also?
Yeah.
That's got to be a perk.
Cool. Yeah. So that's, you're using the same product they're using to set tile. You're not pulling out another piece of equipment or another tool or another product to put your shower system together.
So we're not up to date on the cost because you guys donated the product. So it's probably more expensive, certainly when you're gathering all the stuff, but can you talk about the cost if somebody's trying to decide if they should spend the money for this system, help them understand
I would say an average shower. I mean, we don't get down too far into the weeds with cost. We mostly, we're a manufacturing company.
Yeah.
We do put out a retail price book, what we suggest that people sell that product at. But for the most part, I would say an average 3x5 shower materials cost on our end of it, retail, you're probably in at about $700.
Oh, doesn't seem so bad.
It doesn't. And the real thing for me as a tile installer, and this is where I talk about the business side of it with installers now, because again, tile installers didn't get into the tile world on purpose. Okay. So they don't necessarily have a business background. Yeah, they know how to install tile really well, but they may not know how to run their business.
It's the problem with contractors generally.
Okay, fair enough. And so what I had to do, and I looked at it too, my first takeaway from it was, this stuff's expensive. Like, how am I going to charge this extra $700 to my clientele on top of what I'm already charging and make this work? And what I really had to do was sit down at my desk and say, okay, I'm doing it this way and I'm spending about $300 in materials, but it's taking me a week and a half to finish the shower. Whereas now with the Schluter system, I'm spending $700, but I'm getting it done in 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, there you go.
Light bulb.
Yeah.
You know what? I just gained almost a week.
In other words, it's less expensive.
It is in the long run. When you factor in your labor, it's less expensive.
So that happens. From my perspective in construction, that happens a lot. That you can offset labor with material.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not in as technical a way as what. Not in this, it's not the same. But for instance, you've got a choice between spending a certain amount of time hand digging because you can't get the backhoe in, and a certain amount of time fighting the forms in order to save 2 yards of concrete, or you can order the mud right now and throw away the 2 yards of concrete and be done and gone and cleaned up day after tomorrow instead of only, you know what I mean? It's the same. The difference in preparation time, installation time, cleanup time usually amounts to significant savings in labor. And the other part of that is, for me, is that it's labor where you get in trouble. You don't get in trouble with material because that's a fixed cost.
Correct.
Okay, and if your material goes up, it only goes up a fixed amount. But when your labor spirals, you have all of the concomitant. There's a word. Okay, now that's the first time I put that in a podcast. Okay, you have all the concomitant associated exposures of injury and accident and breakage and oversight and misordering and that increases faster than just the cost of the material. So I think I'm understanding that about Schluter.
Right.
That you are.
I'm going to look that word up
Yeah.
after
Okay.
we're done
I hope I
here.
used it right.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not betting on it, but
I'll give it to you.
Many times material is way cheaper than labor, and that's what you're talking about.
Right. Absolutely. And that's really what, like I said, from the business aspect, it's really hard to get installers to wrap their head around that cost, because they look at it as, well, I'm losing money because I'm not getting my labor out of it. But what you have to understand is you're getting your money in the time savings. And I'm hard-headed. You know, I don't want to say cheap. I'm saying frugal. It took me a long time to learn that time is money.
Yeah.
You know, you can, I guess, beat that into your children's head, and you can hear it from aunts and uncles and elders all your life, and until you experience it and understand it and wrap your head around it for yourself, you just don't get it. And I think in the business world, once installers understand that, and they, you know, I said, look, just give it a shot, just try it, you know, use us on your next 3 or 4 jobs, and let's see where you're at.
Yeah.
You know,
if I was a tile contractor, it sounds amazing to think about, instead of stockpiling pallets of hardy panel and CMU block, and it's just like this foam and fabric, and pretty soon you accumulated a boneyard of extras
there's
and
always
remnants, and it's like that just sounds like such, and it has the kind of corporate warranty, or at least
absolutely, you got
more powerful warranty than, you know, the block is going to.
You know, offer. when I started using Schluter, I think we talked about 14, 15 years ago, incorporating it into my business. And it took me a while, you know, to understand the science, to get it incorporated into my business. I didn't just come back from Anaheim, California and jump right into it and say, I'm going to use all this stuff all the time and figure it out. It took me, you know, probably a good year. I used a little bit. I give my customers a choice and stuff like that. But really, once I started wrapping my head around the production side of things, and the fact that I'm not packing heavy bags of mortar up the stairs, and I've got products that aren't going to damage your finished house when I walk in and bump the wall accidentally.
If I was a tile setter, and if I was facing this decision, I would be sold the minute I picked up a piece of that. What's that orange board that goes against the wall?
Curdy board.
Pick up a piece of Curdy board and cut it with a utility knife, versus lugging hardy board upstairs and cutting that, and the dust goes everywhere, and it's crunchy, and the edges. So I mean, that's great stuff. It's better than what existed before.
Right.
But man, I looked at that and I thought, okay, that is the deal maker for me.
Yeah.
Whatever the science is on the rest of it, handling that and putting that up for a substrate is a win.
Yeah. Well, the cement boards is what you're talking about, you know, and those came out in the mid 80s, and they were great because that's what we had. What they didn't incorporate was the waterproof capabilities and all the other benefits that you got from the Schluter. And, you talk about the dust and now the silica inhalants and all the other stuff that we're dealing with in the industry, you got to pack that stuff outside.
Yep.
So it's not like you're just packing it all into your job site. Well, if you're doing a second story bathroom like we did, in the house over there, you're up and down those stairs how many times?
Yep.
And if you factor in that time that you had to go up and down those stairs and outside to cut it. And
just that would sell me if I was a tile guy.
Right.
Just that.
Yeah.
Never mind the rest of it.
Right.
I love that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can just pack that all right into the room that you're working.
Yeah.
The grid lines on all the materials make it
great.
so nice.
Wham. It's
one
straight.
measurement, find and the guy that produces that, I believe his name is Dennis in our Plattsburgh facility. When I first went to Schluter 4 years ago and talked to him about, he says, I can guarantee that's going to be on the panel, square and true every time.
So that's a moneymaker.
Right.
If I know nothing else, I know that's a moneymaker.
Yeah.
So talk about this, such an old trade and craft, and there's also like cutting edge technology. Talk a little bit about the industry as a whole in terms of what people are doing with tile separate from the materials. You probably see a lot of tile jobs, and you know a lot of tile guys. So
Great
what
question.
kind of things are you seeing out there that craftsmen are doing that are really pushing the trade forward?
Oh gosh. Well, there's a lot of creativity that we didn't have. I look at my tile career and I look at some of the stuff that the guys are doing now, and I was a hack. I thought I did a good job for my market, which I'm sure I did. But some of the stuff that these guys are doing, I'm always out there to educate and to help teach them. But I'm just as in awe of what they're showing me as what I'm showing them on the product side of things, because they're getting creative with our products. And we did a thing a couple years ago. So we have a social media team that's all they deal with is that, social media has taken over a big part of our industry. There's so much of it, just like this podcast.
Here we are.
But we have a social media team that put together, there's all these tile guys that are on these forums and different things. And so we sent them all to Florida, and I think they ended up with 11 different teams of tile installers. And they basically just gave them a big pile of Schluter and said, here's your stage, show us what you can do. And some of the creativity that came out of those modules and pods and things that these guys were doing, because they just, if you're just given a pile of materials and the free realm to be creative, it's amazing what they can come up with. And we learn from that too, because we see how our products are utilized.
New ways to use the stuff you're making.
Like in what way? Is this like in terms of, are we talking all about showers? So in terms of different shaped benches and dishes,
and niches, and what I've always told, I said, if you can dream it, we can probably figure out a way with our materials to make it happen.
So like what's some of like the really creative or wild looking showers that you've seen that
well, I think when you get into the creativeness of it, some of it's even just in the tile. There's murals,
just
there's
the overall
artistic
design
of it.
That's what the art impulse, man. When it shows up, it's unmistakable.
Absolutely.
It's the same way in the blacksmithing world. There's lots of guys like me who can make a handsome, crafty piece. But then there's a guy named Tom Joyce, or there's a local guy, Dave Thompson. And they've got this art component, and when they make something, it's next level.
Right.
And it's got to be the same with tile.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I see that a lot in the industry. Guys are just super creative. Gone are the days with the simple 4 1/4 white tile, square stacked and maybe a black line through it or something. Yeah. Now there's, they're doing all kinds of creative things there's hexagon tiles that I see. And the one that I thought was very interesting was like the shower floors that spill out of the shower and into the walkway in the bathroom.
Yeah.
That was one of the first creative. And now we're starting to see that trend on the walls where they'll take the hexagon tiles. And one of the ones that I was out at the coast here not too long ago, they basically had a tub surround next to the shower, and there was I think it was a full 6 foot wall or whatever, but there was an air gap at the top, and that tile, he had it spill out from the shower over onto over. Yeah, and that was pretty cool. I thought that was pretty cool. But design wise, the thing that I'm seeing the trends with, and now with our heat systems and the fact that you can incorporate barrier free showers are huge.
Yes.
Curbless applications. We had the aging in place for so long. People, they're in an older house, but they don't want to move. So how can I may be in a wheelchair someday. I may be to where I can't step over that curb. So we started coming up with barrier-free designs. Well, now I think it's more of a trend. It's more of a want than a need. So I see that, and I can't see not offering that to my customer because we've made it so easy with our thinner, high denser pans and everything. And now you've got the heat that you can incorporate into that. So
I was skeptical of that, of the practicality of putting heat and a floor and a shower, until Dave Hu said, well, if you heat the floor dries out and you don't have mold or mildew. And around here in the Pacific Northwest, that's a thing, the grout mildews. You get mold. But heat the shower floor. You step out of the shower, the thermostat at the right moment clicks off, the floor is dry. That's a win.
Right, absolutely. I was talking to you about the rainfall inside my house. There's an article.
Yeah. And
it's totally accessible on the internet. You can Google it.
Oh, the amount of water in a shower compared to rainfall. Yeah.
Outside your house. And what we don't realize is there's more rainfall that happens in our shower. 1,100, I think it's 1,100 inches annually inside our shower in a typical 12-minute shower. Okay. And if you got daughters like I do,
sure,
that shower's on more than 12 minutes a day for sure.
And we have 30 inches over the course of a year, and a good and a normal year here on the
outside
of the house. Yeah.
So we're doing more to protect the outside of our house than we are to protect the inside of our house. And I look at, well, my grandmother's house didn't have plumbing until my dad was born in the 30s, and I think sometime in the late 60s or mid 60s is when plumbing came into her house. And I think,
wow.
When plumbing came into the house is when we started having problems with the envelope build, right?
Yeah.
Once we introduced water into the equation.
There was some old timer back then who's like, we're going to bring water in the house. And then he's like, that's a terrible idea. Your house is going to rot.
Right.
That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. And it's kind of like,
don't bring it in. We don't have vapor barriers yet.
Right.
Like in my house with showers, there's more water outside of the shower with kids and gosh,
and you have boys, right?
It's just it's unbelievable how much water doesn't go down the drain.
Right.
It's like they're trying.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So
why did I invest in a shower door?
I know some countries like in Asia, it's just much more common to have the whole bathroom, drain into one spot, and man, that makes so much sense.
The difference over there is they're doing a lot of masonry, slab on grade. America is one of the only countries that we love to build out of wood, right? So we got to protect that envelope somehow, and that's what I love about our products is we have the ability to protect the floor outside the shower as well as protect the floor inside the shower.
Really protect it with redundancy.
Right.
It's not like you're just painting a latex layer on there and hoping you don't scratch it when you're putting the work in, and you're not going to know the problems there until 12 years later when you're in the crawl space and you see that mold growing up. It's not that. You put that in there and you sleep at night. I like it. I like it.
Right. And there's a lot of science and a lot of thought that goes into it. It's not, we're there for the tile industry. I think I started to talk about it earlier, but when I first started in this industry, we had a couple reps for the whole West Coast. They were out of California and they ran the whole West Coast all the way to Alaska. And now, it's not just the products that we have, it's the representation, the, what's the word I'm looking for here? The lifeline, I guess, of our people that were there. Like I said, I was just out this morning with Dave and Phil on those jobs with those guys training installers, but we're willing to go out because I was an installer. I can walk the walk. I can talk the talk. We have this whole network. Now we have 5 guys in Oregon. We have 5 people in Washington. We can be there for the installer and all the different aspects from the architect, the designer, all the way down to the installer and the builder.
What's it like being in the trade still, but not, with the trowel and bucket in your hand? And I know that there's probably guys who are laboring hard who would really like to be in the industry, but not labor. And I'm guessing at times you kind of miss having clients. So what's that like kind of having, been on both sides of that line now?
There's days where I wish that I was back on that side, on the other side of the trowel, so to speak. And there's days that I am, and that's what I love about our company is we do these, our education part or our part of getting out there and training the installers is working with the trowels, working with our products. And nothing excites me more than when installers, a new installer that has never used our product before, or a builder says, hey, I want to incorporate your product into our build. Can you come out and work with my installer? Heck yes. I'm gonna try to make every effort that I can to get there the week that you're going to be doing that project to help that guy.
That's really cool. Hey, whatever happened to Verner? Is he
So Verner's semi-retired. I mean, it is his nest egg. I mean, when people ask what is Schluter, well, Schluter's a person. Verner Schluter, he's our founder. He's semi-retired, I guess. Udo and Mark took over his company. Those are his two sons.
Cool.
So Udo's more, the technical side, the computer guy, and Mark, from my understanding, I haven't met Mark. I met Udo when I first started. He is more on the troweling side of things. Loves that. So we got a really good.
One showers at night, one showers in the morning.
Exactly.
So
there we
talked
go.
about that earlier. That there's a
I just don't shower at all.
So Verner's kind of, Verner's just kind of, I think he's just kind of taking a step back. But again, building a company like this from the ground up, it is your baby. You're never going to get completely out of it.
I can't imagine like the love and like what it would feel to have had an idea and started, laying tile and to had so many, just built a business. Like I can't imagine the feeling of, even if he's not coming to the office every day, just
what it's grown to.
Yeah, I just can't
you
imagine
look
that.
at what we started out with, one simple idea.
Yes.
edge metal.
Yeah. And now we've grown that into, literally thousands of edge trims for different applications. And that's the other thing. We take a lot of cues from the tile industry. What's your problem? What's the issue? What do you, okay, we're going to take that back to the drawing board. Is anybody else having this issue?
And then think about this. Tile has been around a long time.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Romans were putting tile in bath facilities, right?
Yep.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
It's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then to have come along this kid in the 60s, tell his mom, I'm going to do that, and then do it, and then initiate essentially a quantum leap in tile process. And to where now some amount of the tile that's being put in the West is put in a fundamentally different way that is measurably better than it ever was before. That's that's doing something.
But a lot of those ideas are from what you're talking about with, like our uncoupling membrane, that whole idea stemmed from the compacted granular mass. You go to these European countries and you see these churches, and stuff that have these marble floors that are just as beautiful as the day they put in. Well, how did they do that? How did that tile sustain, the longevity that it has?
Hundreds of years and all the foot traffic it's taken and everything.
Right. And it was a sand, that's what we kind of got away from in the industry when we went to thin sets in the 60s and 70s, was we were direct bonding to surfaces we shouldn't have direct bonded to.
Oh, you're saying the older application was just on granular fill.
Yes.
Perfectly flat, perfectly level, perfectly compacted, sit there and never move. And then we started gluing it down.
Extremely load bearing.
Yeah.
But it was like little ball bearings that allowed the surface to move independently
as it needed to
of the building.
So cracking's not a problem.
Right. And that's exactly where the science came for our Dieter product.
Interesting.
Except we made it in 1/8 of an inch thick versus maybe 2 feet thick.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So there's a lot of science. That's why I go back to the science. There's a lot of science in the products that we have. It's not just, throwing out there a product that, we're going to test this on the market and hope it works.
This will work.
Yeah.
But to Nate's point, what would that feel like to have innovated, to made those kinds of technological jumps? Something as ancient as tile work, and then to have your sons pick it up and go, that's pretty neat.
Well, he's probably got some guys that he could rattle the names off. He must have met some really clever engineers early in their career and be like, this is what I want to do. Someone who helped develop.
You're speaking back to Verner.
Yeah. Just kind of, it's easy it's his name on the company, but at the same time, there's probably been a lot of really smart people solve all of these like the guy in back east making the printing on the Curdy board,
right.
For example, like there's probably quite a few really key people in the business who've developed and refined and advanced the science of the product.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're looked at in the industry as, the top of the top or the cream of the cream or however you want to look at it. But like I said, we're still learning ourselves. You know, we're still learning from other tile setters. And that's what I love about this job in particular is it gives me that chance to get with these guys like Dave and Phil and see what they're doing. And sometimes they're teaching me stuff. You know?
Yeah.
Sure.
But,
So maybe last question, and less for the professionals listening, but just for the DIY guy, is a tile shower home, kind of redo your own model shower, something that's a doable project for a weekend warrior?
absolutely. You know?
And where would they start, and what would be like your advice to that person who's like, I'm thinking about doing this?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you've got any handyman skills or do it yourself, I mean, you know, we get phone calls weekly from homeowners, and you know, so they can go to our website, www.schluter.com. Is that too many W's?
No.
No, you did right.
Or they can go to our YouTube channel, Schluter USA.
That's what I recommend.
Yeah, Schluter, yeah, the YouTube channel. Love the YouTube channel. But Schluter, everything that we have out there, we have a video for. Every product, every installation, you know, and if you can't find a video, I mean, give us a phone call. We'll probably, because sometimes we got to dig deep in the archive. Some of that stuff's hidden by specific names of products that we're using in those videos, but we can generally find something for you. And if not, I mean, that's what we're here too. A lot of our phone calls are just fielded from the field, people that are doing their own. They called the Schluter helpline, our 800 number. There's always somebody there. It's never a recording. There's
cool.
always somebody there to answer the phone. So they're either going to get somebody in Plattsburgh, New York, or Reno, Nevada,
Hooray.
here in the U.S. From 5 o'clock in the morning till 5 p.m. at night, there's somebody there to answer those phones. But if they can't give them the answer, you know, maybe it's an install question that our CSR isn't necessarily familiar with, they can call one of us in the field, you know.
Okay, here's the last question. And you may not have the right answer or have much to say on this, but I think generally speaking, people think of Europe as the old world of tile, masonry, stone, brick. They build with it more. It's just a huge part of their life. And therefore, the tradesmen and the craft happening there is probably happening at a higher level. Is that true so far as it goes? Is that inside of Schluter? Do people think of like, well, let's see what the Germans are doing and then all kind of follow suit? Or is that just sort of, how does that happen from your guys' point of view? Or is there anything to that?
You know, they're in a different world over there. You know, we get phone calls a lot of times. There's products that we produce just specifically for the European market because things are a little different over there. Like I said, they're miles ahead of us in the tile industry. And the way that I equate that is, you know, they're serious about it. Us in the U.S. not necessarily always serious about it.
So
know?
what do you mean by that? Miles ahead. I mean,
what I mean by
that's the
that,
question I'm looking at. That's what I was hoping this would go.
Over here, anybody can become a tile setter. You know, you can go out, you can get licensed, you can get bonded, and you can become a tile setter. It doesn't necessarily mean that you know what you're doing. In Europe, it's a different scenario where you actually have to work under your peers, you know, other tile setters for a minimum. It's an apprenticeship program, a minimum of 5 years. And then you don't get to call yourself a tile setter. They deem you a tile setter, meaning after you've done all the grunt work and worked your way up and you've shown that, hey, I'm worth my weight in gold or whatever, I can do this job. They deem you a tile
Sir Tile Setter.
Right. And again, that's a minimum of 5 years. It could be 6, it could be 7. In my case, it'd probably be 10.
That's a long time. I mean, most of us have had like 2 or 3 jobs over 5 years.
Right.
So
right.
It's a long time.
So
to stick with
it's just, it's a different world over there. Like I said, I always equate it to they just take their job more seriously.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
know, when we just visited with Riley Kirkpatrick, a farrier, a local a horseshoer, he said the same thing about horseshoeing in Great Britain. He talked like 8 years,
something like
including
Wow.
4 years of classroom training,
Yeah.
and then a certain amount of hands-on before you are a horseshoer in Great Britain. So
the benefits that I can see to that as a homeowner, you're going to get a quality job.
that. Yeah.
Okay. But it probably keeps the labor costs at an even keel, right?
Yeah.
You would think.
Yeah. Good point.
higher.
I mean,
Yeah. Even
well,
way up there.
higher maybe, but still evenly across the board.
Yeah.
You know, over here we've got so much fluctuation, and I see it a lot on the tile forums. You know, how much would you guys charge for? There's so many variables to that.
Yeah.
There's so many variables to that.
I'll bet they have the same, I'll say, national stereotypes about perhaps Eastern Europeans coming in without that sort of oversight before they begin to do the work, just like we talk about the Latino community coming, the tension that exists in the American Southwest between those different labor forces, and the way that the reputations and the work that's done and the pressures of competition probably generate some stereotypes and some hard feelings. And I'll bet that Europe has that too, with different
I would imagine that
provide labor at different.
But the Eastern Europeans, I mean, they've been setting tile in Russia and Ukraine for a long time also. So I wouldn't necessarily
I'm not denigrating.
Although I'm sure Mexicans have been setting tile for a long time.
Oh, man.
Too.
Oh, yeah.
They're probably incredible.
Saltillo tile, baby. I mean,
right. That's the handmade that we were talking about in the beginning.
Miles.
They know a thing or two about tile.
They do.
Yeah.
Man, super cool. Well, Ken, thanks so much. This is different because our viewers haven't seen our tile video yet, and they probably won't. So this is a little preview of what's to come. So if you guys are,
they will eventually.
Well, they will eventually. But at the moment, if you're just confused, just hang tight, and that Spec House video will come up, and you'll see it all, and it'll make more sense. We'll put all the links in the description so you can get a look sooner. And Ken, anything else you want to mention? Schluter.com is the website.
Yeah, www.schluter.com. That's our website. You can go there, find all kinds of resources. We have a downloadable app for your iPhone or your Android devices, which is really cool because that app, what I like about it from the installation side is the guys can pick out their materials right there, copy it into a project list, and shoot it right off to whatever one of our ASDs or our dealer lists.
Really?
They're on the website. Yep.
So when they're bidding,
they can get a price quote.
That is really cool.
Right.
Huh.
So it's just,
idea.
As I've been enjoying this conversation and enjoying understanding your product, you've helped us understand your product. We've got like 3 or 4 things in that house project that are fairly new or non-traditional, with all of the OSB and TJI framing members, with our on-demand water heater, our Renai water heater, the ductless mini-split HVAC system, and the Schluter system. These are things that are relatively recent additions into West Coast.
Well, yeah, I mean, since the 80s.
Since the 80s.
We're still known as the new guys on the block.
But I mean, it is. I mean, it's fairly recent history. I mean, we live in a time when if it's over 15 minutes old, it's ancient.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But anyhow, I'm delighted. I am delighted to have watched that stuff go in, and I'm anxious to see it grouted, and I want to see the water run over it and go down the drain. And so I'm excited.
See it functioning.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we will catch you next time.